When Stella Bowles was in grade 6, she learned that the beautiful river across the road from her home was actually an open cesspool. More than 600 households were flushing their sewage directly into Nova Scotia's LaHave River. And although that was against the law, nobody was doing anything about it. The authorities weren't even telling people about the problem. So Stella, who was 11, tackled the problem herself. She erected a big sign beside the road: "This river is contaminated with fecal bacteria." And she became a citizen scientist, learning how to test the water for fecal bacteria. Guided by a retired professional scientist, she began testing the water monthly at 4 sites. She entered her results in a science fair and, aided by her mother, she set up a Facebook page, which caught the attention of the media. The page went viral. The mayor got involved, then the provincial and federal governments. Eventually, the 3 levels of government committed $15.7 million to rid the river of sewage. And Stella began a project to show other kids how to tackle other polluted rivers. She also published a book. And at 13, she was named one of Canada's top 25 environmentalists under 25. I want to talk about, I guess I want to talk about the way that things evolved for you, because this has really been an astonishing 3 or 4 years. And it started out with not being able to swim in the river.
It did. It was just supposed to be a grade 6 science fair project. It's one of those things that everybody kind of does, and it evolved to something so much greater than that.
Yeah. But why did you want to do the science fair? Because you knew you couldn't swim in the river. Is that the starting point?
Yeah, so I knew I couldn't swim in the river because Mom, she always told me, I'd ask if I could swim in the river, and she'd say, no, it's dirty, and then just kind of brush it off. But then when our septic system collapsed that my great-grandfather installed way before my time, that's when Mom mentioned straight pipes at the dinner table, and how we were told we had 3 months to fix our collapsed septic system when our neighbors flushed directly into the river. And when she told me this, I was appalled and disgusted and couldn't believe that that was a thing. I had so many questions. Why are there straight pipes? Why is that allowed? Is it allowed? I had so many questions, and it evolved from there.
And then how did you figure out to do the science project?
So with all my questions, it led to Mom kind of getting annoyed almost with me constantly at her. Why can't I swim in the river? What's wrong with this? Why are people pooping in my water? And she got involved with Blue Nose Coastal Action Foundation, and they led us to Dr. David Maxwell. He actually lives down the road. He's a retired medical doctor who had been testing for years prior to me, and after we got together, we talked and thought that this would be a good grade 6 science fair project.
So he became the person who showed you how to do the actual work for the project.
Yeah, he's my mentor.
Yeah, yeah. And not very far away.
No, just down the road. He comes and visits us often.
Okay. So now you take the science project, and the science project gets presumably graded, and people think well of it and so forth, but you're not going to stop there, right?
No.
The next step is you put up a sign, is that?
Yeah, so the next step after we did the testing, we got our results back, and the results were really bad. They were disgusting. We were really shocked. I was shocked. I couldn't believe that this was what was happening in my river. After, I wanted a Facebook page, but I was 11, so Mom said no. So we compromised and put a big sign on our wharf that said this river's contaminated with fecal bacteria. And after we realized that this could be something bigger than just a project, Mom decided that we could have a Facebook page, but we run it together. So
which is a good solution. Right?
It was a good solution, yeah.
Tell me about those results, because when I was looking on your Facebook page, I noticed that you weren't 100% confident that you could use those first results, but they were certainly suggestive, weren't they?
So the first time we actually did testing, it didn't work. Our control was contaminated, so we had to go back and do it again. So after our second time, our control was clear, so we could use our results. And at 70, you shouldn't swim, and 170, the water shouldn't even be in contact with your skin. In front of my house was about 250.
Wow.
Yeah, and our town, Bridgewater, was way higher than that. The levels were just really terrible.
Well, there was one of them that was up over 3,000, wasn't it?
That would be Bridgewater, yeah.
Bridgewater, yeah.
Yep.
So that's presumably toxic to practically even look at. Right?
Yeah, it's not good, and that's where people put their boats in the water. We have movies there and over the summer outside, and it's just, kids are always there playing, and just to know that the water's so gross, it's kind of scary.
Had anybody been testing at all?
Blue Nose Coastal Action Foundation had been testing, and so had Dr. Maxwell. but nobody really listened to them. I'm not sure if it's because they're adults, because when I came along, it kind of took off. I don't know, probably because of my age. The fact that I was 11 saying that there's an issue that the adults probably should have fixed before.
That's something Dr. Maxwell said. I've got him quoted as saying that they had been blown off and brushed off all of them for some time, but they didn't know what the hell to do with an 11-year-old making a loud public statement.
Yep, that sounds like something he'd say.
But you do have an advantage from being young, because people aren't expecting you. Number one, they aren't expecting you to know or care about it. And number two, they're certainly not expecting you to have scientific evidence about what the problem is.
Exactly, and I had done gram staining in a lab to prove that my testing was enterococci. I had done duplicate testing, parallel testing with a lab. So I had all my bases covered that people couldn't come at me and say, well, you're 11, your testing's wrong, because I had all my bases covered. I had scientists backing me up and Dr. Maxwell. So
that's fabulous. Now, how do you? What comes in here about? Something comes in about. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing this correctly, but foraminifera. Tell me what the role. Tell me, number one, what that is, and number two, what the role of it was in your work.
For my past year science fair project, I wanted to kind of keep in with the environmental studies, so I looked at foraminifera. So essentially, they're single-celled microscopic amoeba creatures. I was seeing if there's a correlation between the numbers of them and the levels of fecal contamination in the river, and they're actually affected by the fecal contamination. So where there's lots of contamination, there's almost none of these little creatures.
And other places, large numbers. Huh?
Yeah.
So you can use that both to measure where the contamination is, but also to measure changes in it over time?
Yeah, so I have kind of the baseline now, and if somebody wanted to pick it up after, they could use my results for that.
And that's the one that led you to your scientific paper, right? That's basically
yes.
what the scientific paper says, is here's the baseline. And now you can follow up with studies at any point saying it's improving, it's getting worse, all of that sort of thing.
Yeah, it was a lot of work, so.
Well, I'm sure it was, yeah.
It was, so it's very, very nice to have a paper published.
Yeah, absolutely. And lots of people with PhDs would say it would be very nice to have a paper
Yes,
published.
it was, and it led me to another silver medal at the Canada-wide Science Fair, so.
Isn't that true?
Another huge success.
Now, you have a colleague on that, Dr. Brent Wilson. Yeah. How did that come about? Because he taught at the University of the West Indies and now lives in Wales, neither of which is very close to Upper LaHave, Nova Scotia.
He actually lives down the road from Dr. Maxwell. So Dr. Maxwell said, hey, I know this guy that would maybe be another cool science fair project.
So he's here?
Yeah, he's summers down the road.
Wilson? Ah, okay. So, yeah. Well, the resources are right here then, right? Between Dr. Maxwell and Dr. Wilson.
Yeah.
It's surprising what you've been able to find there. So you've got the results, and now you want to take some action. And you put the sign up. How did you get the sign? I was looking at when I read about the sign, I was expecting something that would be pretty basic, and it was a very professional-looking sign, well built, well lettered, all of that sort of thing.
Yeah. So we went to, I'm not really sure where, me and Mom went to a store just in town and got it made.
Okay. So
Yep.
yeah, professionally done.
Yep.
And then that starts to attract some attention, right?
Oh yes, it did. I had a lot of people, neighbors included, calling me asking me what this sign was and what it meant. So I had quite a few newspaper articles and radio calling me to ask me about this sign and what it really meant. And when I told them and kind of explained my project further, they were really interested in it too.
That's really interesting, isn't it? Because the situation doesn't change. The water is just as dirty after you put the sign up as it was before. Mm-hmm. So that's really interesting. So that situation has been the same for a long, long time. And your sign goes up, and suddenly what you really have done is to start to educate people who didn't even know they had a problem, and now suddenly realize that they do have a fairly serious problem.
Yeah, things won't get fixed if you don't talk about it. So you really have to talk about it. It's the elephant in the room that needed to be discussed, and it got discussed, and now there's things happening to fix it.
Yeah. And the people who had been paying attention would be people like Dr. Maxwell, but nobody was really thinking that was all that serious or something. Yeah?
I'm not really sure why. I think it would be more shocking to have a little kid telling you that there's an issue that you should have taken on so long ago.
Well, yes. And I was noticing that Greta Thunberg at COP24, the young Swedish woman, was saying since the leaders are acting childishly, the children will have to lead. You didn't put it quite that way, but it was close to that sort of phrasing. Yeah. So that becomes somewhere along in here, you get a call about Lunenburg Harbor. So you're becoming a bit of a consulting scientist here, right?
Yeah, so I read in the paper, or Mom showed me a paper that was a man who has a boat. He has boat tours out in Lunenburg, and he was complaining about the sludge that was on his boat every morning, this thick sludge right next to the outflow pipe from the treatment plant. So I was kind of curious to see what the levels were in Lunenburg. So without even contacting him, we just kind of went in and tested for our own curiosity, and we got our results back, and they were awful. And people, it's a harbor, it's our main attraction, it's Lunenburg, it's beautiful, and the levels were awful. So after I posted that, there were some people that weren't too happy about it, and I just kind of walked away from that situation altogether.
Well, yeah, because the mayor wasn't too terribly happy, right? The mayor sort of thought they were doing everything right, and how bad were they compared to, say, Bridgewater?
Bridgewater? They were probably about the same as Bridgewater, maybe a little worse. It was very high levels, very bad. Not good for a beautiful town.
And that's coming out of a sewage treatment plant, isn't it?
Yeah, I kind of backed away from that, so I don't know all the details, but I just kind of let Lunenburg figure it out themselves because I'm focusing on this river.
Now, the next thing that happens is they actually start to fix it, right?
Yeah.
And so then we have $1 million donor comes out of we don't know where exactly, and has $1 million to spend on helping to clean up the river. How did that work, and do we have any idea who it was?
We have no idea who it was, and it's to help cover the loans. So whoever it was, it's greatly appreciated, and it's a huge amount of money for our community.
And it's a flexible thing, which is nice. That they're not. It's money that doesn't have to go through a whole bunch of hoops or applications and so on and so forth. It's money they can use just as they need to kind of grease the machine and get it going.
Exactly. Yeah.
Isn't that great? Oh.
It is great.
So so that's 1 million, but there's still 14.7, and where does that come from?
The $15.7 million was from the Build Canada Fund. So it's a fund of money for Canada, and our community applied for it, and we received it.
That's an amazing result. What does it cover the whole LaHave watershed, or like how far out are the boundaries of where that money is being spent? Do you know?
It's from Bridgewater to the ocean from here.
Okay, so up above, not part of it.
So there are 600 pipes to be fixed.
Other kids, if you were, and you have been out talking to other kids, right?
I have been, yes, quite a bit.
What do you do? What do you say to them? What's your message to other kids? My
main message is that kids can make a difference, and that your age shouldn't define what you can and cannot do. It doesn't define what you can and cannot do. So, and I kind of preach that all the time. I say it more than once. I really want to show kids that it doesn't have to be water is what they take on. It could be anything else. Just that you can be powerful. It doesn't matter what your age is.
I was curious, when you say it doesn't have to be water, yes, there are lots of other problems. And basically you're saying to kids, just go for it, right?
Exactly. If you fall, just kind of get back up and try again.
Are you frustrated that so many of these problems are still there, that your generation is having to deal with stuff that was a problem in my generation, right?
Yeah, it is a little frustrating. I'm hoping that we can help fix the world.
And there's an energy that seems to come from young people here just at this point, almost as though people have gotten fed up. They've had, they look around and say, all these problems and nothing is happening, which I guess is more or less what you felt here.
Exactly, and now with the use of social media, the message can get out further than just a community. And like my project, I just went to Sweden, which is crazy, and I wouldn't have done that without social media. So it's definitely a huge component.
Yeah, that sort of stitches the world together, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Tell me about Sweden, because I'm not sure I understood what that was all about. But how did you get to be going to Sweden?
I got to go to Sweden. So there was a lady, Jenny, who came down to work with Blue Nose Coastal Action Foundation. She works at the World Maritime University in Sweden. So she came down and we kind of got together, we talked, and she said that it would be a really cool opportunity if I go to Sweden and talk to classes about my project. So we got an email a couple months later, and she said, hey, the offer still stands if you want to come to Sweden. We can arrange it. So we talked further, and then I ended up in Sweden, and I was in classes talking about my project. And I showed kids how to do testing, which was really fun. I got to see all the smiles on the kids' faces, and it's really cool to show them that science isn't just a textbook.
That's a big obstacle, isn't it? That science is, if people think science is something that's distant and that ordinary people can't do, and you're living proof that citizen scientists can do a lot.
Yeah, definitely, and that it can be fun. It's not a hard process what I do, and it's a lot of fun.
I was going to ask you about that. How difficult was that? Because you were only 11, right, at the beginning of all of this, but you're out there doing the projects. What do you have to actually physically do?
So you have to go out in the water with the bottle on the end of a long pole with your rubber boots and get a sample, which isn't rocket science. It's pretty simple. But your bottle's sterilized, so Mom would do that part with a pressure cooker because it's a little dangerous for me to do at 11. Then we bring it home and run it through a filter funnel, and then the filter goes onto a enterococci testing card, which then goes into an incubator for 36 hours. So I definitely made a few mistakes along the way, but after a while I got the hang of it.
But the process isn't essentially all that tremendously difficult. It's
No,
very
it isn't.
complicated.
No.
What's an incubator? Is it just a little heated chamber of some kind?
Yeah, it's one that you can grow chicks in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Like
Dr. Maxwell actually made this one, which is it's a big box in our basement. We grow fecal bacteria in our basement.
Probably one of the very few families who can make that claim.
Yep, only one on the street.
So Sweden, but just before that, you had been on the Canadian Walk of Fame.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I got an award from the Canadian Walk of Fame, which was a huge award, huge award. It was a gala we went to afterwards, and it's just a huge accomplishment.
You seem very poised. I mean, I was watching the video of that, and you seem not to have very much in the way of butterflies in your stomach. You're a very capable public speaker. Did that come naturally?
It definitely came with a little bit of practice. I was always told if everybody makes mistakes, so if you make a mistake, just keep going. Everyone's human.
Well, that's great, but some people are paralyzed and stay paralyzed, and you looked as though you'd been doing it, for years and years and years.
I think there was about 1,000 people in the room, including our past prime minister and Olympians and some pretty important people there. So
Did you have butterflies in your stomach?
A little bit, yeah. A little bit. Well, not too many.
Yeah, that's great. Well, the people that you've met through this, I mean, you have met the present Prime Minister, right? And the Federal Minister of Environment, the Governor General, 2 astronauts, actually. Right?
Actually, I think it's been 3 astronauts, yeah.
And so people are obviously very ready to hear this and very ready to see a ray of hope coming from somebody like yourself.
Yeah.
You also got to Ecuador.
I did.
Tell me about that.
That was the best experience of my life. I have pictures plastered all over my bedroom wall. I talk about it every day. That's where I met my best friend. I got to go to Ecuador as a Canadian Youth Ambassador. So there was 30 youth from across Canada, and we got together, went to Ecuador to help a local community build a school. It was so much fun to be able to help a community. I learned so much about their culture and all of that. And then afterwards, we went back home. We met back up in Ottawa a month after, and we talked to MPs and senators about our issues, because I had the straight pipes I was talking about, there were other people talking about nursing homes and how we can help benefit them, and all these different projects to see what other youth around across the province and country are doing.
Okay. So that's a fascinating one. And
yeah, we were down in along the Napo River, and we were in the big boat, all 30 of us and our chaperones. And we were told not to touch the water because the only thing living in it were piranhas.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And there were tarantulas, and there was a big water snake, and I don't like any of those things. Yep.
But that tells you that there's a problem in that river too, right? Is it the same thing? Is that also a polluted river?
I'm not sure. I didn't test there.
No. I wondered though if that's all that's living there.
I wonder as well.
Yeah. And you've got tell me about the scholarship to Western. Because I'm told you have one of those already lined up, right? Yeah,
so with the winning of Canada-wide Science Fair with my second place, I won a $2,000 bursary to Western.
Well, that's where that came from.
Yeah.
I was curious about that. Where do you see yourself going from here?
I'd like to think that I'll end up in environmental law. It could change 100 times before then, and I like that kind of field.
And not in science. You're already a scientist, but that doesn't appeal to you so much?
No, not yet. If it ever will. Science is a lot of fun, and I love what I'm doing. But after my Foraminifera project and all of this, I think that I'm really passionate about science and the environment. But I think I'll go with the environment.
Well, it occurred to me as I was reading through some of this material, I thought, you know, your impulse here really starts from trying to make a difference socially, right? It isn't really a scientific impulse in the first place. Science is a tool, but what you're really after is social change.
Exactly, yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. How does this affect Stella Bowles, age 14, going to school with a whole bunch of other 14-year-olds, and how do they regard you? Because you've now become a kind of a superstar.
So I do miss a lot of school, but my teachers are really good with helping me adapt and catch up. I've been exempt from a few things because I was gone, for example, in Ecuador for a week or science fair, but they realized that I'm gone to learn, not go on a beach and go on a beach somewhere and have fun. So they really understand that. My friends at school are really, really supportive. For my book launch, I actually had almost half my class show up, which was really nice. I wasn't expecting any of them to show up. So,
tell me about the book.
My book, so I did not write the book, and Laurel Carter wrote my book from my perspective. It's actually going in all grade 7 classrooms here in Nova Scotia, which is really cool to think that these kids are going to have my face in my book in their classroom and learn that, hopefully be inspired that they can make a difference too. I think it's really an inspiring book, and I hope that other kids take on projects.
How did it come about?
And actually summers down the road as well. They all do. There's the coolest people down the road we never knew about. Yeah, so she lives down the road, and she kind of got in contact with my mom and said, hey, I'm an author. This might be a book, might not, but do you want to have tea and see where this goes? So she came over for tea. We just talked, random little conversations, and she took notes. And she really became me to write this book. So when we were going through the editing of the book, I'd read it and be like, and I'd look at it and think, wow, that's something I would totally say. And just she put little quirks that I'd say. She even got my dad's jokes in the book. Yeah, it's really well written.
So she really had listened to your voice.
Yes, definitely. She did an amazing job.
Did you spend a lot of time interviewing for that?
Yeah, but she lives in Toronto, so we'd have to FaceTime. She was actually on vacation at one point, so we were FaceTiming with her on vacation. It was a really cool experience on how someone writes a book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, amazing that it's going into all the grade 7 classrooms.
Yeah, that was a really cool email to receive.
Yeah.
Mom texted me while I was at school and said, read this email, and I read it, and I had to read it again because it's going in all grade 7 classrooms. It's incredible.
Yeah. And you'd met Margaret Miller, the provincial minister of environment.
Yes.
And I sometimes wonder what the world looks like to her. I'm just curious if she said anything to you that would shed any light on this, but she spends an awful lot of time saying no, that we can't do anything about this, or that we don't have the information, or so on and so forth. But she seemed very forthcoming with you. Did you get any sense of her having difficulty doing that, or
She had always been very nice to me, and I appreciate that. She'd always listen to me, which is nice. I have tried to enforce illegal straight pipes all across Nova Scotia, and say that when an illegal straight pipe is sold, that when a house is sold with an illegal straight pipe, it should be switched over, which makes sense. Every house that's sold with one of these illegal pipes, it's switched over to a septic tank. Then that's one less in our rivers. But that idea was kind of swept under the rug. I emailed her twice kind of about this subject. I actually got to meet with her people, which was a good meeting, had a good talk. So hopefully we can see some change.
Do you sense that is likely to happen, that there will be a prohibition against transferring the property without rectifying the sewage situation?
I hope that there's something that comes about, that when a house is sold, the straight pipes should be switched over. They're illegal, they're not even supposed to be happening. People shouldn't have them, but they're still there, so we definitely need enforcement on these.
This is where environmental law comes in,
Exactly.
Because I mean the law is there,
Mm-hmm.
but if it's not enforced, it means nothing.
Yeah. I've definitely been talking with some environmental lawyers to see their points on this, and
Have you?
It's really
Yeah.
interesting to see how it all works.
I was curious to know if you had talked to environmental lawyers, if they had sought you out and sort of said, can we do something together on some of these issues?
Yeah, I've definitely been talking to a few of them. Yeah.
Well, that's really promising, because like I'm with you. It seems to me that when the house is sold, you don't have to say everybody has to do it all at once. But when the house is sold, there should be some way to do, and maybe you just add it to the mortgage. You add the cost to the cost of the house and finance that over the lifetime. How difficult would that be?
It makes
really?
sense. It makes sense.
Yeah. Can you judge anything about your impact on the kids around you? Have any of them begun to move in these kinds of directions, for example, or are they untouched by it?
I think that kids are definitely, hopefully, touched by what I'm doing. After presentations, I always have the occasional few kids that come and ask me if they can do testing for their water, or if they can help, or what can they do to create change for their community. When I was in Sweden, a couple kids asked me for my autograph, which I thought was funny.
I'm not surprised, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have become. So have you been helping some of the other kids to do some testing, and how has that been working out?
Yeah, so I've been going around the province. I have 4 groups, I believe now, that I'm showing them how to do the testing. I provide them with a kit for a year's worth of testing. If the results are bad, hopefully they aren't, but we know that some will be. We can get political like I did, whether using my Facebook page or they create their own and I just share it. Then we're hopefully going to get political and clean up more waterways like I did. So I'm really inspiring kids to take on a cause like I did.
Are any of them doing things in other fields? I mean, like air pollution or any other the many, or biodiversity or wetlands or there's all kinds of stuff all around us. Are any of them doing any of those kinds of things?
I'm not aware of anybody doing anything else, but I'm hopeful that there are kids doing things that I just haven't heard about, and hopefully I'll hear in the news in the next little bit.
What's next for you?
What's next for me?
To some extent, you must have been just sort of surfing a wave here, and
I have been just kind of going with the flow as it comes to me. I've really been trying to focus on when a house is sold, the illegal straight pipe should be switched over to a septic tank. I think it seems like such a simple ask, but it really isn't. If I talk to some people about it, and they said it's harder than you think, but I'm really trying to push that and push the government to enforcing these illegal straight pipes. So hopefully we can see change with that within the next few years.
Well, it does seem like a really logical thing to do, and it seems like a logical outgrowth of what you're doing.
It does, yeah. Every time a house is sold with one of these pipes, it's one less going into our beautiful rivers.
And what are they saying about what makes that so difficult?
There are some real estate agents that aren't very happy about it. People say that the house would lose value, or there's a few little things that people aren't too impressed with. But.
Yeah, but it is illegal. I mean, the value of the house, you wouldn't think, should override the illegality of the sewage system.
And if the water's clean, wouldn't the value of the house go up with the property and the clean water?
All the properties.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It sounds to me like this is the kind of place where funds like that $1 million donation could be really, really helpful if there were, and there's no real reason that a municipality couldn't do that either. Say, in fact, I think they do it in some places where they will basically lend you the money to do the work, and then you pay it back with your taxes over a 20-year period or something like that. But they need to have the money to lend in the first place.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So it seems like a simple ask, but there's all these different steps you have to take. So hopefully every time we go a step further in the right direction.
Well, there's lots of records in the past of issues like, say, the ozone layer and so on and so forth. People said, oh, it's absolutely impossible, and the cost is out of sight. And once it's done, it's only impossible till it's done, and then people look back on it and say, oh, it wasn't so. This should be one of those.
Impossible.
Yeah, this should be one of these.
Yep.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can, instead of just taking little steps, take a big jump and really create change.
Yeah. I want to come back to the whole question of the inspiration that you've provided to a lot of people. And I noticed the Reader's Digest, for example, has you on the cover.
Yeah.
Have you had a lot of feedback from that?
I have. I was not expecting to be on the cover. I was told I'd be in the Reader's Digest, which I was pretty happy about to begin with. And then when our photographer sent me a picture of me on the cover, it was crazy cool. I called my aunt right away and told her, guess what? I'm on the cover. And she was really happy. We were all happy. We were in the car. It was a huge success. I've had it, my teachers have it in the classrooms on the board. It's so crazy to think that I'm on the cover of a magazine.
Yes. Well, it is and it isn't. It's such a good story that any magazine would be happy to do it. I'm curious to know if that's the kind of thing, because that's the sort of place where you may not even know about it for a long time, or possibly not ever, but somebody's reading that someplace and saying, well, wait a minute, if she can do it, we can do it. And I'm curious to know if you're getting any of that back from the magazine articles, particularly, just as people sort of saying, I saw this and I want you to know what's happened here.
I've had a few people message me on my Facebook page and just say, I love what you're doing. I saw your article, or I saw you on TV the other night. And every time someone messages me or sees this article, it gets the message further, which is really good. Every time somebody else knows, that's another person educated, and then they tell their friends about it, that's more people, and it hopefully snowballs into more people wanting change to happen. And
so Stella, when you look forward to the lifetime that you have ahead of you, as I'm now looking back on the one that I've had, but as you look forward, do you feel hope? Do you think do you see the prospects of major change that will make the planet a much more livable place and prevent the disasters we seem to be hearing predicted all the time?
I do have hope. I'm very hopeful that other people will take on this cause. My generation has a lot of power, especially with social media now. With just one simple post can create so much talk and hopefully fix our world.
As I stand here, the most striking current news in the fight against climate change is an international movement of kids going on strike from their schools to protest adult inaction. In the US, kids have sparked a national conversation about gun control. And of course, the most important climate suit in the United States right now is the Juliana case. 21 kids suing the American government for its encouragement of fossil fuel use and its knowing failure to address climate change. Tomorrow belongs to the children of today, and they, thank God, are already starting to shape it. If you enjoyed this interview, you might also enjoy our interviews with Rachel Parent, the teenage anti-GMO activist, and with Alexandra Morton, the amazing citizen scientist fighting for the survival of the wild Pacific salmon. For The Green Interview, I'm Silver Donald Cameron. See you next time.